Are you ready for an open discussion with the best of the best and the best of what's next? Welcome to the Tony DUrso Show. Join in on a great conversation today with some of the world's great influencers as they showcase great advice and techniques that made them the game changers they are today. Now, here's Tony DUrso.
Welcome, I'm your host, Tony DUrso. Once again, I'm pleased to have you join us. And I want to thank you again for faithfully listening every week and sharing this with your friends. After all, it's all about helping you and your friends turn your vision into reality. Now, today we're chatting with someone whom I believe is quite special. I mean, all my guests are special, but this one, wait till you check this out. He's at the top of his category, an elite entrepreneur, and we're going to discuss Create Your Own Reality with Frank McKinney. Now, what is success? How do you define it? What is your reality? Let me ask you this. Are you doing, are you getting, and are you being what you want out of life? Really? Are you? Can your life be better? You know, sometimes some of us are in tough situations. Sometimes we lose things and people valuable to us, perhaps a loved one, perhaps our house, perhaps our job. A lot of people have been hurt in the past year or so, but you're listening now because you did not lay down and give up. You persevered. And you've heard my story enough times. I lost it all and I came back better, new and improved. It was more than motivation and inspiration. It was a dedicated drive that kept me going. Now he says, motivation washes off and goes down the drain with the soap. Inspiration lasts about as long as a bad sunburn, but aspiration will forever impact your reality and in turn, the lives of those you love. I want you to meet Frank McKinney as a real estate artist. He created and sold 44 oceanfront mansions on speculation with an average selling price of $14 million each. And they're absolutely stunning. I'll give you his website in a moment. And in addition to being an elite entrepreneur in the real estate business, I love this about him. Frank is a philanthrope capitalist and keynote speaker. We're going to tell you more about that in a moment. And the topic of his new book, Aspiration, is about never settling for who we are born to be or even what we think we're capable of, and instead breaking free of that limited mindset to create a new reality on our own terms. And we're going to talk about later on in this episode, we're going to talk about what I believe is the most important topic to me, his Caring House Project Foundation. Let's find out more. Hi, Frank. Welcome to the Tony DUrso Show. So glad to have you with us today.
Tony, my clock has been set on countdown for like a week because I've been so excited. I watched your other episodes. I don't just jump on any podcast. I want to make sure it's a quality podcast. Yours is, and so much so that I am coming to you today. You can't really tell from the background, but I'm in my oceanfront treehouse office. I decided to let's do it special for Tony and your guests, your viewers. And I work out of a treehouse, and that's where I'm coming to you tonight from.
I absolutely love it. And I know you're probably close to the water or ocean because all your properties are, and there's something about that draws people to the ocean. I'm just like a couple blocks away. I love walking my dog down there or taking a lunch and going down there. I'm talking about the Pacific Ocean for me. I just love it. Some
Yeah.
people call it the vast, terrible ocean, but when you hang out with it for a while, it's very calming. But Frank, I'm really looking forward to learning more about how to create our own reality. And I've got a lot of questions about this. I've written books about this. I have a new book coming out that talks about this. But just before we get into that, can we fill in you with your backstory and tell us, Frank, how did it all start for you?
Yeah, I mean, oddly, I may not look like it, but I'm a corn-fed country boy from Indiana. I'm the oldest of 6 children. My father worked at a bank. My mother was a school teacher. Living on a farm in this small town called Carmel, Indiana, I had a troubled youth. I went to 4 high schools in 4 years. I spent 7 different stints in juvenile detention. And I had an opportunity when I was 18 to take out, we'll imagine this is an eraser, and turn around to the chalkboard of life and erase what was, which was a very troubled youth and upbringing, and get on a plane with a one-way plane ticket, a $50 bill, and everything that I owned in a duffel bag thrown over my shoulder, and took that one-way flight from Indiana to Palm Beach. When I landed in Palm Beach, Tony, you and I are probably close to the same age. There was a program on TV called Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous with Robin Leach and that wonderful English accent that he had. For you young people that are watching, it would be similar to MTV Cribs, that voyeuristic look inside the lifestyles of the rich and famous. And I landed in Palm Beach, Tony, and I was intoxicated by this lifestyle. I I couldn't believe what I saw people driving around in and the way they dressed, and I wanted a piece of it, but how? I was uneducated, a 1.8 GPA out of high school. There was no hope of going to a community college even. So I got a job digging sand traps as a maintenance worker on a golf course, earning $180 a week. But I was around affluence, Tony. I was around people who could afford to play golf all day. It just fascinated me. So I moved from the golf course to the tennis courts. Same people that were playing golf in the morning were playing tennis in the afternoon. I was a maintenance worker. So I was a very good tennis player as a young boy. So I decided to become a tennis pro. I picked up the racket again, a teaching tennis pro, not a touring tennis pro. And I was teaching very wealthy people how to hit a better forehand and a backhand. I started my own company called the Professional Tennis Service. And for 2 years, I went to school on the ultra wealthy. Here's how I did it, Tony. They paid me, let's say you're one of my students, they paid me for an hour's worth of tennis lesson. I made sure after 45 minutes that they could not finish that tennis lesson. They were too tired to finish the tennis lesson. They sat down, I brought them a cold drink and a towel, and I would ask them, Tony, tell me how you got here. And the answer I got more often than not was some form of anecdotal real estate story. For 2 years, I picked the brains of the ultra wealthy, and I earned my master's in real estate and my PhD in entrepreneurship on that tennis court 15 minutes at a time. And in the late 80s, I bought my first fixer-upper, my first flip. Matter of fact, flip wasn't even a word that was used outside of gymnastics. People weren't flipping houses back in the late 80s. I bought it, fixed it up. It was a crack house in a really bad part of town, sold it, made $7,000. It could have been monopoly money, Tony. I was so proud that I validated the concept of buying an undervalued commodity, fixing it up like nobody else, marketing it like nobody else, and selling it for 103% of retail. And I made $7,000. Tony, for the first 5 years of my career, my real estate career, that is, I didn't do a house worth more than $100,000. And the book Blink, which was written by Malcolm Gladwell, Gladwell talks about to become an expert at anything in life, you have to spend 10,000 hours. And if you do the math, 10,000 hours is 5 years full time. I didn't do a house worth more than $100,000 for 5 years, but I became an expert at the craft of real estate. I'm a real estate artist. I'm not a builder developer. I'm a real estate artist. That isn't my moniker, by the way. That was something given to me by the Wall Street Journal and USA Today. After those 5 years, I jumped from $100,000 fixer-uppers, flip houses, to a $2.2 million house on the ocean. Nothing in between. I went from $100,000 to 2.2 on spec. So for those of you who aren't familiar what that means, it means I'm building these houses without a buyer in mind. There's no buyer. It's my design. I'm buying the land. I'm furnishing the house down to the gold-plated toothbrush in the bathroom, linens on the beds, and towels in the closets. And putting a for sale sign in the yard, and like the Field of Dreams, I'm building it and hope they will come. And for now 30 years, as you mentioned in the open, Tony, I've done 44 houses with an average selling price of $14 million. And my artistry, like I might look like I can sing or play an instrument. I can't sculpt. I'm learning how to paint, but I'm not very good. I'm a three-dimensional artist. I build three-dimensional art that people can live in. One of a kind, break the mold when we're done. Somebody walks in the front door on a Tuesday, might be interested in the house. By Friday, Tony, they're sleeping there. They act that quick on. So when I say on spec, this house is completely furnished. They do nothing. I even provide the toothbrush. I provide the automobiles. So as long as you have a check with a digit and a bunch of zeros after it, you can move in tomorrow as long as that check clears. So that's what I've done professionally. Of course, I'm an author and I'm an ultra marathoner and I run a pretty big charity over in Haiti. But that's the long answer to your short question about my background.
That's very fascinating because when we think of real estate, we think of people that flip it or have apartments or whatever. but never an artist. It's this is the first time I'm thinking a real estate artist. Now I understand you've been called that, someone gave you that title. And when you first heard about that, did you say, "Oh yeah, I'm an artist," or is like, "What is that? I just build homes." Like, how did that come about? The artist part, because what you do is very, very unique. You don't hear about this very often. At least I don't in my circles.
So that's a great question, because my new book, Aspire, the subtitle to my new book is How to Create Your Own Reality and Alter Your DNA. I wanted to be a real estate artist. I wanted to be one before I was called one, because I don't like the title developer or builder. It's not creative enough for me. So if you go to our website, which you'll talk about later, and you look at some of the designs, I designed all of those right here at this oceanfront treehouse office desk. And my canvas is that sand. If I were to spin my computer around and show you the ocean that's right over my head here on the ocean, that's my canvas. The blank vacant lots on the Palm Beach County coast, or I make them blank by tearing a house down or moving a house. That is my canvas. That's where I create my three-dimensional art. And I think, and there's a chapter in Aspire I talk about, take an artist approach to your craft, regardless of what it is that you do. And what I mean by that, very quickly, if you think about Renoir or Monet or Van Gogh, which are painting artists, if they go into the art supply store back in in their day, do you think they bought the cheapest the cheapest paintbrush, the cheapest palette, the cheapest paint? I always chose to build my reputation before I built my bottom line. In other words, I sacrifice margin for my reputation. That's what an artist does. Yes, of course, I don't want to be a starving artist. I want to make money. But from that very first crack house all the way through to the big, beautiful house I build today, I do what Van Gogh or Renoir or Monet or you name your famous artist would do. Sit back on that canvas, mine is three-dimensional, not cut corners, and build something that takes your breath away. It literally intoxicates the five senses: sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste, to the state of subliminal euphoria. My buyers become so intoxicated when they walk in the front door that I need my my intent is to move them from need, I need a house in South Florida, to desire. Frank, I desire what you just built. And, I mean, I'm not just starting to talk about this today. I've been doing this for 30 years and we've been very, very successful at it. So I'm really proud and honored to be called a real estate artist.
Frank, your passion comes through, your exuberance comes through. And you said that you wanted to be this real estate artist, and then you're called this, and I get that. And is there some undercurrent, some passion, some reason, some drive below that? Like, why do that? Why did you pick that? Why not go into something else? I understand all the tennis uh, clients had pointed you that way, but that doesn't necessarily, people get pointed all sorts of places, but there's this passion that takes them. Why are you doing what you do, in other words?
So let me start with the kind of dumbing it down, and then we'll come to today. So back when I was that tennis teacher and I was teaching these people tennis, I was young, impressionable, and materialistic and consumeristic, just like anybody is at 18, 19, 20 years old. I wanted the life that they had. And the path to that life, Tony, was through real estate, because that's what they taught me. Once I started into the business, I've been a pretty creative person, and I felt like even if I was doing a crack house, I would put three coats of paint on instead of two. I would put a new roof on instead of just patching the old. I'd put grass sod down instead of grass seed. I'd put $20 yard carpet in instead of 10. I I made it the nicest little crack house on the block, even though it wasn't a crack house anymore. And I felt like the American dream was not meant to be rented. It was meant to be owned. And for those people who were renting the American dream back then, when I was early in my career, I took them from renting the American dream to owning a piece of the American dream, a house. Like I remember putting in new appliances, not used, Tony, and I would leave the stickers. You ever bought a new appliance and it tells you the energy rating on the appliance, that yellow sticker? I left those on because I wanted people to have the pride associated with having a brand new refrigerator. And then you kind of fast forward to maybe not fast forward. It took me 5 years to get to the high end market. You talk about passion. So I think passion is overused. I think passion, I can have passion for chocolate and it's not good for me. I found my purpose. I found, so aspiration, and I'm just going to do this very quickly and you tell me if this is inappropriate. Here's my new book, Aspire: How to Create Your Own Reality and Alter Your DNA. Aspiration is an almost otherworldly desire to achieve something high and great that alters the DNA. In other words, it's not a goal. A goal you either achieve or you don't, and then you move on. I aspired to be a real estate artist when I was in my early 20s. That's something I will have for my entire life. So that part of aspiration, that's why I wrote this book. I've written 7 books in 6 genres. This is my first mindset book. And now I'm not dead, obviously, but this is kind of a postmortem on the mindset it took to get to the point where I built those 44 houses, and I run a very large charity in Haiti where we build self-sustaining villages. I've run the toughest foot race in the world 12 times. And I study, even from a scientific standpoint, epigenetics is the alterations. It's the science of altering your DNA. If you're a movie buff, which I'm not, but if you happen to be a movie buff, the story of Elton John's life was, the movie was titled Rocket Man. And in Rocket Man, while he was still Reginald Dwight, that was Elton John's birth name, his manager grabbed him by the shoulders and said, Reginald, you have to kill the person you were born to become the person you want to be. I'm going to say that one more time. Think about that. Kill the person you were born to become the person you want to be. Tony, I wanted to be a real estate artist. I was born to be a banker. My grandfather was a banker. My father was a banker. My left brain abilities were off the charts. I was statistical. I was analytical. You name it. I had a business mind. And I was taught my entire life that I wasn't a creative. I was told, I should say, I was told my right synapses, my right brain were dormant. And Frank, or my nickname was Mickey. Mickey, you're going to be a banker. I didn't want to be a banker. I wanted to awaken the synapses on the right side of my brain. Now, the people that you look up to, and everybody watching this, the people that you look up to, I guarantee you they can toggle back and forth between right brain and left brain in nanoseconds. That is something that I've honed, that I now say, okay, well, we're going to do a $20 million house on the ocean. Does it make financial sense? Left brain very quickly. And then we get to the right side of the brain. I'm going to build a piece of 3-dimensional art like nobody's ever seen before. And that constant toggling between right brain and left brain is the way that I've altered my DNA. I'm not a banker. I'm not a juvenile delinquent. Obviously, I'm older. I'm not in trouble. I really found a constructive outlet for what was, when I was younger, a very destructive tendency, Tony. So again, long answer to your short question, but that's the thesis behind the difference between aspiration and motivation and inspiration.
We're talking with Frank McKinney about Create Your Own Reality, and you can find him at frank-mckinney.com. And I'm going to spell that. Frank, we know that one, Frank, then a dash, then McKinney.com. Remember that, because we're going to talk more about that as well as his book. Frank, I think some of my points that I want to talk about are titles from your book. It's so fascinating, and in no particular order. And I think this first topic is near and dear to every single entrepreneur and small business owner that we have in the audience. There's something that we have to do to be successful. We have a thought, we have a process, we have a service, we have a product, and we take it to market. And here we are listening to the show for advice and wisdom. And your topic, the topic I want to talk about, is mastering risk. You've done it so well. Can we learn from you on this?
I think that's one of the things you can learn the most from about me. And let's dial it back to my younger years. Coming to Florida with no money, no connections, no education, actually a troubled upbringing, the odds were stacked against me. What I've learned, again, I'm still alive, but a little bit of a postmortem on what got me to the point where I'm at now is, Tony, I'm afraid, just like everybody else watching your program, I'm afraid every day of my life. I still have fear that the next house I build may not sell and I will be eating out of a dumpster instead of at the Ritz-Carlton. What has happened over this whole process of creating my own reality and altering my DNA is I have learned that the thought of taking a risk, so if that risk was financial, spiritual, relational, dietary, you name it, that risk, you have to think about taking the risk before you take the risk. It's the thought of taking a risk that induces the other four-letter word, fear. It's not the actual taking of the risk. And I'm going to give you a simple analogy. You and I are at Disney World or Land in line to get on the roller coaster. And as that line serpentines towards the gate at the end where you hop into your car, both of our heart rates are going up because we're getting a little anxious about what's going to happen. When you and I, let's say we sit next to each other in the roller coaster car, the minute we sit down and that metal bar comes clanking across our waist, what's happening to our heart rate? It's starting to raise even more. Then the car's cut loose and we're starting to go up the hill. Clickety, clackety, click. We're about to pass out because no blood's going to our head because we're so afraid of what is about to happen. Nothing's happened yet. We're still safe and sound in the car. Nothing has happened yet. Yet we're terrified of the thought of the risk of going over the hill. What happens the minute we go over the hill? Fear goes away, is replaced by joy and jubilation and excitement, and we throw our hands in the air and we're enjoying the ride. That's exactly what happens in business. And you and I love that ride so much that when we're done with the ride, we get to get off the car and we run to the back of the line to do it again because we're not afraid anymore. That's exactly what happens to people, most people that are successful in business. When I feel fear, which I just said is every single day, Frank McKinney is afraid. I have not mastered fear. Fear is not meant to be mastered. It's meant to be used as a catalyst for that big change or big challenge in your life. Again, financial, spiritual, dietary, relational. When you and I contemplate a risk, more often than not, Tony, that risk comes in the form of a big change or a big challenge in our life. But we never get to the big change or big challenge because why? We let the fear associated with the thought of taking the risk stop us dead in our tracks. We jump off the roller coaster. We jump out of line. We don't jump off the road. We jump out of line and say, no, 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 no. The Google thing says this is unsafe. My aunt and uncle said I should be investing in real estate. The news is very negative. I should not be taking these risks. We let that, the over Googling, over spreadsheeting, and over analyzing things get in the way. We're looking for a reason to validate the fear subconsciously. You don't know you're doing this. Subconsciously, you're looking for a reason to validate the fear. So just like every other human being, which I am, when I feel fear, I know that is the sensation necessary before I am to take on that big change or big challenge. If I'm not feeling fear, then I'm not taking a risk. And if I'm not taking a risk, then I'm not growing. For those of you who are, maybe a little bit less optimistic than I am, well, Frank, what if I take the risk and I fail? What if I get over the fear, take the risk, and I fail? Well, here's what's going to happen. The day that you die, before you die, you will likely have regrets. There's no doubt. You will have regrets. Would you rather regret what you did or what you didn't do? For me, I would rather regret trying that $50 million house and failing. And yep, just like Tony, like he said, he lost it all and came back. He tried. What would you rather do? Sit in that rocking chair at 80 years old and say, I wish I woulda, coulda, shoulda, or like we'll get to talking about this race I run across the Death Valley Desert, which is the toughest foot race in the world according to National Geographic. It's not my claim, it's National Geographic's claim. I've tried that race 12 times, Tony. I've failed 5, but I've made it 7. Do I have regrets about trying those 5? Hell no. I'd rather regret what I did than what I didn't do. So that's the full circle on what you can learn in my book. It's a full 5 chapters on just risk, fear, big change, big challenge.
Frank, I got to tell you, in all honesty, when you're talking about a roller coaster, I hate roller coasters. I'm getting sweaty. I'm getting diaphoretic. I do not like roller coasters. Now, on the flip side, my wife loves roller coasters. She can't get enough of them. So when we went to Disney World, I had to do it. I went on the most toughest ride, the most toughest roller coaster there, the Yeti, and I just did it first thing in the morning. Just did it, got it out of my system. And after that, the rest of the day was fine, but I still break out into a cold sweat just thinking about it.
But the key word is thinking about it. Once you did it, you did it. And you know you
I
can do
mastered
it.
it.
You
That's
mastered it.
right.
You got over it.
Thank you. And now another point, I believe it's in your book here too, is another thing. It caught me. It was like, I got to talk about this. Becoming a relentless executioner. What? Who are we
Oh yeah.
killing here?
No. Okay. So let's say you get over the fear, you take the risk, you take on the big change or challenge, and I'm going to use a clock. I'm going to use a hands-on a clock as an analogy of what happens to you. So at 12 o'clock we start. We're excited. We're thrilled. Frank got me super excited. I'm ready to take on this new business change or challenge or risk. The hands make their way to 3 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, the excitement's worn off. At 3 o'clock, it's not what the program that I bought at the real estate seminar said it was going to be. I'm not excited about this anymore. This looks like it might take some time. And this happens to the younger generation, by the way, not so much to people like our age, but the younger you are, the more this happens. When you get to 3 in an endeavor, you become what I call a flea. You hop from one endeavor, one undertaking to the next because it's not exciting enough, or the excitement that you had at 12 has worn off. So in the real estate world, it would be, I want to flip houses, but it's not as exciting. So I'm going to go ahead and wholesale houses. I'm going to buy bank REOs. I'm going to get into the storage business. I'm going to own an Airbnb. But you never stick with one of them long enough to become that master, that executioner, which we'll talk about when I get to 12. Don't be a flea. Don't hop from one thing to the other. See something through, at least past the excitement phase, because that's going to wear off no matter what. All right. So you made it past 3. You're on your way to 6. At 6, this is drudgery. I mean, not only did the excitement wear off, but I'm showing up at a job site that has no power, has no water, and one of the subcontractors took a dump in one of my toilets. I have to clean the stinking mess out of the toilet with the shop vac, and then I have to clean the stinking mess out of the shop vac. I don't like this real estate business. This is too hard. This is hard work. I don't want to work this hard. I've gotten to the halfway point, right? Past the excitement, past the flea, and at 6 o'clock, you quit. When did you quit? You quit at the halfway point. And you, in my book, are what I call a half-asser. You half-assed it. You got, if you, there's only one graphic in this entire book, and it's the image of a flea at 3 o'clock, and it's the image of half a donkey, so a half-asser at 6. Don't quit when it gets tough, because that's just life. All right, let's say you made it past the flea, you made it past the half-asser. You're not that. You don't want to be called a half-asser. You get to 9 o'clock. This doesn't happen to about 15% of the people. You become so associated with the process that you forget the purpose. In other words, I love being a real estate artist, and this creativity is fantastic, and I'm almost done with the house, but oh my God, what am I going to do when it sells? I'm going to lose my identity. It's the college student who's 2 credits away and drops out of school because he's so enamored with the process, he forgets why he went to college in the first place. This person, it doesn't happen often, and it actually has happened to me a few times early in my career. I was so enamored with the process, I could see the finish line, Tony. I was at 9 o'clock, yet I seemingly tied my own shoelaces together. I call you a shoelacer. Like you've got past all the excitement and the being a flea and and the hard work. You're almost at the finish line. Don't forget why you undertook that risk in the first place. Risk is supposed to be undertaken. I think that's the right word. Undertaken or undertook for reward. I have no desire to hold on. People say to me, Frank, those houses you build, they're so beautiful. How do you sell them? Don't you want to move into them? They're just stunning. My answer is I have no emotional attachment whatsoever to any of the houses I've built. I don't become that real estate artist, Tony, until it sells. So I get past the shoelacer point where I'm just so enamored with the process. I get back to 12 and I've become what I refer to in Aspire a relentless executioner. So I execute on what I start. And the whole chapter is designed to help you identify, are you a flea? And why do you have those flea tendencies to hop from one thing to the next? Why are you a half-asser? Why do you quit when things get tough, and how to get over that? If you happen to be one of the 15%, why are you a shoelacer? Why are you so involved in the process? And how do you overcome that and remember the purpose and become that executioner who makes it all the way back to 12?
I want everyone to ponder this very well, because if you take a look at Frank's site, some of his homes, one home, he sells them so fast. One home sold in 3 days. Can you imagine that? 3 days, many millions. It's sold. Just think about that, and think about his story on the clock, becoming a relentless executioner to execute and get stuff done. I absolutely love it. I think you make me think of that locomotive that just keeps going no matter what. Nothing stops it. That's kind of the visual I have on that.
What last point on that before we go on to the next chapter, if you don't mind. What I want you to think about, and in today's world, it's hard. If Tony brought me onto the program to debate me on politics or theology or whatever, he'll win. Anybody, you will win in a debate contest. I'll win in a do contest. I am a doer. I'm an executioner. I have 4 sisters. 3 of them went to Notre Dame and Stanford. And when we get together, I'm not knocking them, but I mean, we just sit there and debate stuff. It's like, you guys win. I'm just going to go do. I'm a doer. I'm not a debater.
I love it. In fact, one of my phrases that I believe I'm famous, at least in my family, is I won't talk about anything, any project that I'm working on. I like to talk about it when it's done, when
Beautiful.
it's out. Here it is. I did it. And then, because otherwise there's naysayers or whatever comes in, and I just want to do it. So when I'm successful at something, it's just because I do it, I get it done, then I can talk about it. And I
You are an executioner, Tony. That is by definition an executioner. Talk less, do more.
exactly. All right, one more, and then we're going to talk about a project near and dear to my house, near and dear to my heart. I said house because it's about houses, or should I say homes? I'm being a little silly, but it's okay. I want to talk about living your inside on the outside. What's that?
It's funny. So about a decade ago, some stranger on social media, I got a pretty big, social media following. Some stranger said, Frank, I admire you so much because you get to live your inside on your outside. Like, you do not look like a typical real estate developer, investor. You don't dress like one. You don't wear your hair like one. And I don't believe in compromising or co-opting or selling yourself out for anyone in a relationship or anything or any endeavor. So I have stayed true to who I have been on the inside and wasn't going to uh, compromise that inside for something I wanted on the outside. And too many people today, especially in corporate America, suppress who they truly are for that paycheck. They're selling their soul, Tony, for the paycheck. Now, this is changing. There's a nice little shift with workplace rights, and you can express yourself freely now in the workplace. I really like that. But that chapter is speaking to the person who still feels that there's all this wonderfulness inside that they are suppressing, either socially to fit in, or worse, I think, trading your soul for a paycheck. And I'd rather eat out of a dumpster than trade my soul for a paycheck. So when that woman said, Hey, I really admire you for living your inside and the outside, I dug deeper into that for like 10 years. And I realized, you know what? I have never, well, in the book, I talk about one time I sold out and I regretted it. I'm not going to get into the story. It's kind of a long story, but it was the early point of my career. I got a haircut. I put a suit on. I got a tie. And it just was the worst thing I could ever done. But I want more people to feel the freedom associated with living their inside on their outside. So that's the whole purpose of that chapter, Tony.
That makes very good sense, because when we do go to a work or a job or a different part of a different calling or different project of our life, and we change some of the beingness of who we are, it kind of just doesn't seem to work out. I totally follow on that. Now, another point that I think is very near and dear to our entrepreneurs and small business owners, which may or may not make a lot of sense because it sounds like you need it for sales, but I think it's very needed for growing our service, our brand, who we are, and that's developing personal magnetism. Can you give us some hacks on how to do that?
So that's in the love life chapter, that section, I should say. So there's a section in the book titled "Love Life" and "Love Life," like your love life. And I'm the last person to give relationship advice. I am not a love guru by any stretch, but I felt it was time to share wisdom gained from being married for 31 years and being with my wife for 34 years, but married 31. And I've also found, Tony, that in business, and of course in life, but primarily in business, how many times are people forced to choose between their marriage and their business? I see it happen in real estate all the time. Somebody's so passionate about getting into real estate and buying and selling houses or apartment buildings or you name it, but they fail to involve their significant other. And ultimately, it leads them to this treehouse talking to me about, Frank, I don't know what to do. Should I stay in my marriage or do I give up the real estate career? In that chapter, in that whole section, I talk about how to develop this. It's called magnetic-ism, not magnetism. I've split the word into two. And ism is something that you want to, it's deeper than just being magnetic. And so I want to, in that chapter, show you how to attract the right person. And this is more romantically. This isn't just in business. How to attract the right person into your life. Because for me, Tony, there's a chapter titled How to Marry Your Guardian Angel. I got to marry my guardian angel. How to marry your guardian angel. It's the title of one of my chapters. The other part in that section, relationship pressure creates the diamond or destroys the union. So if you look at the forces that are at work under the crust of the earth that pulverize the sand and the minerals and turn into that rare diamond. So my wife and I, we work together. Excuse me. She's an interior designer. You can imagine the danger in that. So we invite the conflict with respect so that we have this diamond in the end. So that whole section, how to marry your guardian angel, how to develop personal magnetic-ism, relationship pressure creates diamonds, the significance of a significant other. This is another chapter in that section. Most people are not going to go through life alone. You're going to have a significant other at some point in your life. How significant that will be to your career and how you treat that significant other when you bring them into this passion called, for me, real estate or whatever your professional highest calling is. Involve that significant other early, or else you'll be forced to choose between one or the other. And I hate to see that.
I love it. And by the way, I'm catching up on you. I've been with my wife now 29 years this December. And
We,
there
we,
is that you making the diamond. I really like that. It's perfectly apropos and it works. She always says that she's my wingman. She's
we could
always watching my back. She's always making sure she just she has that part that she looks and it just works out great.
Well, we could do a whole show on relationships because 29 years and 31 years, it is so important today in business. If you're in a relationship or you want to be in a relationship, for the vitality and even viability of your business, because the partnership I assume that you and your wife have. I listen. Being married to me is like is like being on a rocket ship with in a blender on frappe. It's not easy to be married to me. So I found somebody who brings out my essence and allows me to be me and is my guardian angel because I have tendencies that could be self-destructive and she'll save me from myself every now and then. Those are the kind of person that you want. I'm sure your wife does the same. She enhances who Tony is. And that's a gift that each one of us can find if we know what we're looking for.
Absolutely. We can do a series on this. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. We have a few minutes and I want to talk about the Caring House Project Foundation. one thing I'd like you to know that, and some people may know, I talk a little bit about this, but I'm talking about me, myself, and some others. We've been giving to the needy and focus on helping family in poverty areas. We've done this for years. We give out sleeping bags, toiletries, clothing items, just about anything to live, including helping to pay for needed life-saving surgeries. In the past 4 to 5 years, one of our members calculated that we have passed out about 53,000 meals. And this has all been out of our pockets. And you can see some of the pictures on my About page on my website. We're going to grow it some more, but it's just never been a focus of mine to tell people about it because, again, I just like to do it. Now, we keep growing in people to feed and help around the world. And so now we have the Southgate Foundation to help us do more. And as you can tell already, it is one of the most important topics to me in my life. And off camera, separately, I'd love to see how we could work together because I love what you're doing. Excuse me. I love about what you're doing about the homes. You guys got to go check out these homes, the before and after. You've got to see what he's done in helping these people. Words just can't do it enough justice. Frank, please tell us more about your foundation and how it started and give us as much as you can about it.
So you mentioned words can't describe it. I'm going to start with 8 words, and it's from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 12, verse 48, that says, "To whom much is entrusted, much is required. To whom much is given, much is expected." I'm not going to go all religious on you, although I am a Christian and I know the Bible very, very well. What I just spoke to you, "to whom much is entrusted, much is required," is a great life mantra that happens to be a Bible passage. So don't let the Bible freak you out if you're agnostic or atheist or what have you. It doesn't matter. It's a great life mantra. So I discovered what my professional highest calling is, building oceanfront artistry for the ultra wealthy. But there was a point in my life 20 years ago, Tony, that I was extremely depressed, almost ready to take my own life, although I was on the top of the world when it came to my professional successes. I had just sold the most expensive house in the history of Palm Beach County. Back then, 20 years ago, it was $14 million. I was on the front page of the Miami Herald. I had my hands raised in triumph over my head. I opened up the newspaper I went to the newsstand. I put a quarter in. I stole like 10 copies because I knew I wanted to give them away. Back then, because it was 5 in the morning, I knew nobody was looking. Back then, we read newspapers like this, like we would snap them open and we'd read the newspaper. So I opened up the newspaper. I'm on the front page, and on page 3 was the rest of the article. And I'm making sure that they quoted me right, and that my picture looked good and the house looked good in the background. But as I had that newspaper open, on this side was me, on that side was a picture of a man who, if I didn't use a bunch of hair care products and go to the salon every month, looked exactly like me. Yet he was being fed a meal out of a beat up old Econoline van from a soup kitchen. He was homeless, living under the overpass in I-95. And it hit me. My picture in the newspaper, the smile on my face was fake. I was hiding depression. I was hiding consumerism. My garage had tons of cars in it. My closet had tons of clothes in it. My pantry had a ton of food in it. But I had lost all the heart in my soul, Tony. All the soul in my heart was gone. And yet this man who looked like me looked happy. There, but for the grace of God go I. I'm on the right side of the page, meaning I took some right turns in my life. And what about if I hadn't taken the right turns out of juvenile detention and ended up on the left-hand side of the page? But more importantly, why was my facade just that, a facade at the time? And why did he look to be experiencing pure joy? I went and I volunteered at that soup kitchen every Monday night to try to find the reason why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And Tony, I learned 20 years ago that every one of us watching this has a professional highest calling. Of course, we don't need to go into that. We also have a spiritual highest calling. I found mine. I provide housing to the wealthy who really don't even need another house, but I'm good at it and I love doing it. What about the poorest? I'm again back to that 1.8 GPA, linear thinker, simpleton mentality. What about the poorest of the poor who have no shelter? Frank, you should be providing shelter to the poorest of the poor. So we went to Haiti 19 years ago. Next year in 2022, depending on when your episode comes out, we will celebrate 20 years building self-sustaining villages in the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, that being Haiti. My donors and I have provided a self-sustaining existence to 13,000 children that were eating mud flavored with bouillon and lemon juice. 29 self-sustaining villages in 19 years. And when I say villages, 50 houses, a community center, a school, church, clinic, renewable food, clean drinking water. We don't sell these things. These are all given to the Haitian villagers for nothing, for free. There's no entitlement mentality of this. I don't feel better about it, Tony. I don't feel worse about it. It's a stewardship, it's a responsibility, and it's a calling. That's why I do it. And even one book, if you buy one of my books, which you'll benefit from for the rest of your life, 200 meals in, I just lost my lights, 200 meals in one of our orphanages. So maybe that's a sign we're almost done. But that passage, if you could just remember, to whom much is entrusted, much is required, and work on your spiritual highest calling. That section of the book, Tony, is section number 5. It's the last section because I believe it's the most important section of my book.
Absolutely love it. There comes a time when you have what you need, your life is good, you're taken care of, and you have to help others. It is a natural progression. It's why you're here, but you don't necessarily know that's why you're here until you get through the other levels. And I'm totally with you. And that's why we do it. And we've been doing it out of pocket for years, just helping where we can because it feels good and it's the right thing to do. Well, once again, everyone, we talked about create your own reality with Frank McKinney at frank-mckinney.com. Check it out. See these homes. See what he's done. See the kids and the smiles on their faces. See Frank running with the kids. And it's just absolutely amazing. You got to check it out. Again, I think words just don't do it enough justice. So go take a look at the pictures. Check it out. Frank, absolutely love this conversation. Stimulating. And there's so much more to talk about. I just want to thank you so much.
Well, we'll have to come back and do an encore because we did leave some stuff on the table. But thank you for having me. You have a very, very good reputation out there for one of the best podcasts in the world, on the planet. So I'm honored to be up here. I'm sorry I lost my lights, but the time was now. So God bless you and God bless everybody. Go pick up a copy of my new book, Aspire.
Hey, thanks for hanging out with me while I featured an elite entrepreneur who took his vision to reality. That was such a great, inspiring interview. Create your own reality with Frank McKinney. We talked about so many things, and in no particular order, we discussed aspiration. It's beyond motivation and inspiration. We talked about how we wanted to excel beyond a real estate developer and become an artist at crafting beautiful homes that sold quickly. We talked about some topics from his latest book. We talked about mastering risk. We talked about becoming a relentless executioner and living your inside on your outside. We talked about developing personal magnetism. And we talked about embracing your highest calling, and also something that's near and dear to me. We talked about his amazing Caring House Project Foundation. When you see the pictures, you know what I mean. Now, please tell me, what did you get out of this? What resonates the most with you? And I want to thank you again for spending some time with us. Let's help you move on your journey to success. Thanks, and remember, just take action. Success awaits those who persevere and remain steadfast despite the odds. Sow good seeds, do good deeds, and join me on the next episode of The Tony DUrso Show.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's edition of The Tony DUrso Show with his key influencers. Be sure to tune in again next Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America Influencers channel.